the number that almost erased us. There is a number that sounds like the end of the world. 1,280. It is small enough to fit inside one theater. Small enough that, if you imagined it as a village, you could walk from one edge of humanity to the other before lunch. But here is the first thing to get right. That number was not a census. No one stood on a hill 900,000 years ago and counted the last humans alive. There was no list of names, no camp record, no witness. The number came from something stranger and more fragile, patterns inside the DNA of people living now. So the real story is not simply, humanity dropped to 1,280 people. The real story is how scientists found a shadow in your genome, argued over what it meant, and opened a door into a time when our ancestors may have come close enough to extinction that the fossil record itself seems to go quiet. Start with the evidence. In 2023, researchers published a study in Science using a model called FIT-COAL, short for Fast Infinitesimal Time Coalescent Process. The name is heavy. The idea is easier to picture. Take thousands of living genomes. In this study, 3,154 of them. Then run the family tree backward. Parents merge into grandparents. Grandparents merge into older ancestors. Branches keep joining until the shape of those joins begins to reveal how large or how small the ancestral population may have been. Large populations leave many branches. Small populations leave fewer. And what the model found was a long, narrow place in the tree. Between roughly 930,000 and 813,000 years ago, the effective breeding population of our ancestors may have fallen to about 1,280 individuals, not the total number of bodies alive on Earth, the effective number passing genes forward. That distinction matters. It is the difference between a dramatic headline and careful science. There may have been more people alive than 1,280. Some groups may have left few descendants. Some lines may have vanished. Some people may never have had children. What survived in your DNA is not the whole crowd. It is the part of the crowd that made it through. And still, even with that caution, the result is startling. The bottleneck may have lasted about 117,000 years. That is not a bad season. It is not one failed migration. It is longer than agriculture, cities, writing, pyramids, empires, and every history book put together. For more than 100 millennia, if the model is right, our ancestral line passed through a dangerously narrow opening. Now look away from DNA and into the ground. The Italian anthropologist Giorgio Manzi pointed to a strange match. Around this same period, fossils from human ancestors become rare. Not absent everywhere, not proof by itself, but scarce enough to feel like another clue. Bones do not vanish because history becomes less interesting. They vanish when fewer bodies are there to become bones. That is where the story gets more human and also more difficult. These were not Homo sapiens. Not yet. Your species would not appear for hundreds of thousands of years. These were earlier human ancestors, walking upright, making stone tools, probably controlling fire, living in a world whose climate was becoming harsher and more unstable. The planet was shifting into stronger Ice Age rhythms. Forests retreated, grasslands opened, water moved, animals moved with it. A good valley could become a bad one. A familiar river could fail. A group that knew one landscape well might suddenly have to cross into another with children, tools, fire, and memory as its only inheritance. Extinction at this scale does not need a single movie-sized disaster. It can happen by subtraction. One dry season that lasts too long, one hunting route that stops working, one group too isolated to find mates, one child who is never born, then another, then another. Over generations, the world does not explode, it narrows. That is the part a simple apocalypse story misses. Survival was probably not one heroic moment. It was 1,000 unglamorous adjustments, a sharper flake struck from a stone core, a fire carried instead of lost, a carcass shared, a risky move toward water, a plant remembered by someone old enough to have seen it fruit before. This is also where scientists have to be careful. The 2023 bottleneck study is powerful, but it is not the final word. Models depend on assumptions. Other genetic methods may read parts of the past differently. The exact size, timing, cause, and even how global the bottleneck was remain open questions. That does not make the story weaker. It makes it more honest. Because the strongest version is not, we know exactly what happened. The strongest version is this. A major genetic study found evidence that our ancestral line passed through an extremely severe, extremely long bottleneck, and that clue may line up with a gap in the fossil record at one of the most important periods in human evolution. But there is another winter people often blame. Move forward to 74,000 years ago. Now Homo sapiens exists, and on Sumatra, a volcano called Toba erupts with almost unimaginable force. It throws ash across the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal. In 1998, the anthropologist Stanley Ambrose proposed that Toba may have dimmed the sun, cooled the planet, and driven modern humans into a terrible population crash. For years, that was the famous version, the supervolcano that nearly ended us. It is cinematic, it is clean. One mountain, one winter, one species almost gone. But the ground has been arguing back. In India, stone tools appear below the Toba ash and above it, suggesting people continued living through the eruption. Climate models have softened the idea of a single planet freezing catastrophe. And at Shinfa-Metema, one in northwest Ethiopia, researchers led by John Kappelman found tiny glass shards from Toba in a site where people seem to have lived through the crisis. The best detail is not grand at all. It is fish. As dry seasons lengthened, rivers broke into shrinking waterholes. Fish became trapped there, concentrated in the last pools. The people at Shinfa-Metema one appear to have leaned harder on that resource. Not because they knew they were surviving a supereruption, because the river changed and dinner changed with it. That is the kind of survival that feels real. Not destiny, not a speech, a drying channel, a pool of trapped fish, a person noticing that the world had offered one narrow solution before it took the next one away. So which winter almost ended us? The answer is not as neat as the title wants it to be. Toba was real, and it may have caused hardship. But the famous Toba bottleneck is much less certain than it once seemed. The older bottleneck, the one around 900,000 years ago, is quieter, stranger, and written in a different kind of evidence. It is not a smoking crater. It is a narrowing in ancestry. And if it happened as severely as the model suggests, then everything that followed passed through that narrow place. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo sapiens, the first burials, the first painted walls, the first boats, the first cities, and eventually you, sitting here while a machine reads a vanished population from living cells. That is the real weight of the number. Not that 1,280 was definitely the last headcount of humanity. That would be too simple. The weight is that our past may contain a point where the future became extremely selective. Most branches did not continue. A few did. And every person alive now stands somewhere downstream of the branches that survived. So do not picture a final village under a dead sky. Picture a record with missing pages. Picture stone flakes beside a changing river. Picture bones so rare that scientists notice the silence. Picture a family tree squeezed until only a few lines keep going. And then picture those lines widening again, slowly, generation after generation, until they become the billions of faces on Earth today. Humanity was never guaranteed, but it was not saved by one miracle either. It was carried by evidence too small to notice at the time. A tool edge, a shared meal, a remembered path, a child who lived long enough to have children of their own. The number is not the whole story. It is the crack where the story shows through.